It's Megan's last podcast before her summer holiday, so what better send-off than an account of a new Nazi trial in Frankfurt, more stuff about Nazi prepper networks, and the Verfassungsschutz catching up to the new concept of the new right. So much fun. Still, there's some good news at the Euros. It's the weekend!
For another Megan's Megacan. I'm Megan. I'm here with ex-Berliner magazine and Konrad Werner. Hello, Konrad.
Hello.
How's it going? That's very jaunty.
Yeah, you should be the jaunty one because you're about to start your summer holiday. You're in Aufbruchstimmung, as the Germans say.
Yes, I'm trying to be. I don't think I've ever been so tired at the end of a school year. I'm sure lots of people can relate, but yeah, it's nice. So this is going to be my last little podcast for a while. I don't know how long I'm going to be away for. We'll have to see what happens with the dance of the corona quarantine regeln.
Yeah, you might be trapped on a Mediterranean island.
Well, that wouldn't be too bad, but I would quite like to see my siblings. But we'll see. Okay. Who knows?
Well, we've got a little surprise lined up for when you're away. More of that later. Or next week, or some other time.
That sounds very, very exciting.
First things first, we have a whole week of news to get through.
Oh, Lord. Well, we better drink then. I've just brought us two of our sort of standard ones, because I don't think we've had these for a while. And also, to be honest, there wasn't a huge amount of selection in your Spezi for some reason. It's usually really good, but maybe they've had a run. Maybe a whole lot of teenagers got out of school on Wednesday and have just been tanning maggots ever since. And
well, maybe people have been listening to this podcast and then tracking us down and then buying them all from there.
So we've got the classic. God, they're like really cold and condensation-y. They look delicious. I got you a Jack Daniels and ginger because they didn't have the other ginger one that you like, but this is also nice. And I'm having the Bombay.
Great.
Gin and tonic. I'm excited. Sorry, I was
back to basics.
Slightly distracted there by Queen Victoria's visage.
Who wouldn't be?
Microphone. Yeah. Oh.
Apparently, as British citizens.
Cheers. What?
We are allowed a free portrait of the Queen. Have you heard this?
What?
I don't know.
Jesus
I just
Christ.
read it on the internet. I don't know.
Oh my Lord.
I think maybe they do it in Australia. You can just send off for a free portrait. And as a citizen,
presumably
as a subject,
like a print, not like an actual.
No, they don't paint one for you.
No, that'd be insane. But also not insane because they live in unbelievable luxury, and I think everyone should get a bit more bang for their buck in terms of the monarchy, because all it is scandal after scandal now, which, while entertaining, is not. Yeah. For the benefit of society. But anyway, that's a different political issue for a different day. What's been happening this week?
Well, I have been following the trial of Franco R. I haven't been there yet. I'm planning to go at some point, but
where is this happening?
In Frankfurt. It's actually happening in the exact same courtroom as the trial of Stefan E., who I talked to you about.
Just so many Nazis that they have to keep putting on trial.
Yeah, well, they always have to. They put people on trial in wherever they happen to be living. So this guy, Franco R., lives in Offenbach, which is just outside Frankfurt. And
that's where he's from, isn't it?
Yeah, so they usually, when it's a big trial like this, they usually have to find the biggest courtroom in that state of Hesse, which is obviously one of our favourite states on this podcast.
Yeah, they've got that delicious cider stuff, my Lord.
Right, and this is the biggest courtroom, and so whenever there's a big Nazi trial, that's the one you go to. It's kind of got all wood panelling.
It sounds like...
Yeah.
Ugh. Okay.
But I don't need to fill you in on the case, do I? You've read up, you've listened to the podcast, and
we are also doing this podcast primarily not just for ourselves, although it is very entertaining for us as well. So let me tell you what I know about him from the very, very good Radio Times. Wow, the New York Times.
That would have been a scoop for the Radio Times.
It really would have been. It'd be really phenomenal content from the Radio Times, which is also a very good publication, but in a very different way. So not the Radio Times, the New York Times. Oh, Jesus.
It's easy to get your times mixed up.
It is. It's very difficult. So the New York Times is doing a podcast called Day X, which is a reference to the day that basically right-wing extremists think that the government is either they're sort of fearing it or they seem to be wanting to induce it, which is where shit's going to hit the fan ultimately in Germany and they're going to have to sort of take over with their mad skills. And Franco A is on trial because he's also he's Bundeswehr, isn't he? Is he the elite one? Like
He was an officer, yeah.
Yeah, so
but he wasn't in the KSK.
No, okay.
Which is like the equivalent of the SAS or something.
Okay. So he's an officer in the German army, but also then started in 2015, I think, when lots and lots of people were arriving as refugees in Germany. He pretended to be one. He
pretended to be a Syrian, French-speaking Syrian.
Yeah.
He just rocked up somewhere in Frankfurt and spoke English at first, put on a kind of funny accent. And they eventually gave him asylum
with boot polish on his beard or some bullshit.
Oh no, it wasn't Frankfurt. It must have gone to Munich because he ended up in Munich. That's right.
Okay.
And they assigned him an Unterkunft and gave him income they assigned him a shelter and they gave him an income, and then he lived a double life where he was in like officer school across the country, and then he would like commute back and forth to collect his benefits as an asylum seeker, and then go back to officer cadet school.
So first of all, he got then caught. The reason they got onto him, if I remember correctly, is because a cleaner in Munich airport?
Vienna
airport was cleaning the toilets, and in one of those little hatchy things at the back of the toilets, I don't know what you put in there, but there was a gun.
Yeah.
And
with bullets in it.
Yeah. And then they were like, he was like, find this gun, lads. Polizei, hello. And they were like, right, well, we're just going to wait and see who comes for this gun. And then Franco showed up.
Yeah, he got and he was arrested. Mm-hmm. And his explanation was that he found the gun while he was drunk.
On a lad's night out, because who hasn't?
And then he put it in his bag, and then he forgot about it.
You always do.
And then he remembered it while he was in the queue for security going through the airport.
It's the equivalent of everyone else realising they've got, a sort of full litre of Coke in their bag. Yeah. And they're like, oh shit, it's not 150 mils, I got to drink this really fast. But obviously it can also happen with guns that you've picked out of the toilet. That's so easy to... Yeah. Oh, he's saying he didn't find it in the... Well,
No, he didn't. No, wait, there's two... You're mixing up two events here.
What?
He said his story is he found it in the bush while he was drunk, put it in his bag, went to get on a flight,
and then panicked and hid it in the toilet.
Panicked and hid it and came back 2 weeks later and take it out again. To hand in.
Obviously, yes.
And then that's when he was arrested. Yeah, this is all in 2017. While he'd already been pretending to be an asylum seeker.
I mean, I'm convinced. Why are we putting this man on trial? It seems like a perfectly reasonable explanation.
After this, the police did a bit of digging around into his background because they realised he'd been posing as an asylum seeker, and they were like, why would anyone do that? And then they said they sort of searched his house and they found, amongst other things, a copy of Mein Kampf and plenty of notes.
Is there a kit that they write off to something and then they get sent like a wee starter pack? What the fuck is wrong with these people?
And plenty of other right-wing memorabilia and notes, and amongst other things, a list of left-wing politicians and other leading civil society figures who he thought were betraying Germany. And now he is on trial for planning a terrorist attack. Basically, he was going to kill some leading politicians. People like Heiko Maas was on his list, Claudia Roth, Annette Kahan, who's the head of the Antonio Amadeo Stiftung, the boss of our friend Nicholas Potter.
Yes, she's very, very cool. She grew up Jewish in East Germany, and her interview, I think, which is in the second episode, I want to say, of the podcast.
Yeah,
is really, really interesting. It's a really, really good podcast. But
right.
So
his trial is underway. They've done about 6 or 7 days of it already.
Right.
And
And so what is he charged with then? Like what?
Well, the main charge is preparing a terrorist attack, and the other charge is like fraud for pretending to be an asylum seeker.
And presumably the idea is that he was going to perpetuate this attack and then blame it on, make it look like it was a Syrian refugee who committed it.
That is what the prosecutors are saying. And then it starts some kind of...
Oh, the fucking irony. Like...
Charlie Manson type race war he was going to provoke, apparently. But that's just me speculating.
Charlie Manson. That's very...
Well, yeah, what do you call him?
Charles Manson.
Oh, well, I don't know.
Charlie is too friendly for that fucking monster.
Okay, sorry. Right. Charles, I should be more formal.
Is it Charlie Manson to be put? No, that sounds
murderers.
Weird.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so...
Right.
Amongst the evidence that is against him, there is photos of the underground car park of Aneta Kahan. So he went to... They found pictures of her car parking where she parks her car and stuff on the phone, and he says that he just wanted to talk to her, so they know he was there.
Or they wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
So it's like the worst level of like men approaching you to just I just want to talk. No one wants to talk to you.
And there were also 129 audio memos that they found on his phone, which is like you know those scenes in Alan Partridge where he's like talking into his thing saying idea for a new sitcom, all that kind of thing, right? But
really terrifying because he's. I mean,
and he says like Hitler is above everyone. France has always been a Jewish state. Jews and Germans are not the same people. These kind of things, these sort of random thoughts. And he says these are just things that were going through his mind. They don't mean anything. I wasn't planning anything. He, by the way, is still, he's totally free. He's like, he wanders into the courtroom from the street every day. He's not like in prison anymore. They had him in prison for like 7 months and then they let him go. So he is busy giving quite a few media interviews. He talks to the press even as he's walking into the courtroom. He's talked to the New York Times. He's also talked to RT. He gave a big TV interview to RT, the Russian station. So he's like quite talkative, and his lawyers don't seem to mind him talking to the press, which surprises me a little bit, but there you go. And his whole defense is that they can't prove that I was going to do anything, because he's just planning. And it is quite difficult, I think, because he didn't actually kill anyone. He didn't actually do anything yet. So it's quite difficult for the prosecutors to prove what they were thinking. They can just present all this evidence, and then it's up to the court to decide whether they believe him.
I wonder if how detailed the evidence, if there was a concrete plan, or it's more just like this lad was obviously up to something.
Yeah. Ugh. So it's quite hard, and there's a whole question mark over these guns that he had. So they have this one gun that he had in the toilet. He definitely owned that.
That's a gun he found, Conrad, in a bush on a lad's night out, like so many of us.
But he also had a G3 assault rifle, which is a Bundeswehr assault rifle. It used to be the standard Bundeswehr assault rifle. And he says he had that gun, but now he hasn't got it anymore, and no one's found it. All they found is a load of ammunition in his cellar, or his mum's cellar. And so it's all a bit of a question mark about what exactly he was going to do. So they haven't actually got they don't have proof that he was standing in this underground car park, for example, with a gun waiting for Aneta Kahan to come down. There's no evidence like that. There's photos. There is a gun, but the gun was in Vienna. It wasn't in Berlin. It's all this other stuff. So they have to make some kind of case against him, and it's going to be quite interesting to see how it turns out. The trial is ongoing, and it will happen. Everything he says, by the way, is totally implausible. But you have to prove it's implausible, That's the kind of weird thing. So the trial is going on till at least October, and then we shall see what happens to him.
Gross.
One thing they found, he was part of this network, this WhatsApp network of Bundeswehr soldiers, which was often called the Hannibal Network, because it was started by a soldier who called himself Hannibal. That's what you were talking about. That's what this Day X is all about. This network were planning for a time when the society was going to collapse and they would have to take charge, with all their, and a lot of them they found, and they did find in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, like buried in the gardens of certain soldiers.
Yeah,
and
we've
not
talked
only
about
soldiers.
this, I think, before.
Yeah, they
Where
found
they
like
just take things home and from work. You
Yeah.
know? Oh, yeah. Shit. Didn't
found
return
really-
my rifle at the end of the day.
yeah.
We have like a little teachers WhatsApp group, and sometimes it's usually pictures of me, my keys, or my phone, and one other teacher's like, whose is this? And that's mine. But it's not the same with guns when you leave those around places where they shouldn't be.
No, and they found body bags. That is pretty dark.
Yeah.
And lime, and all this other stuff.
I heard
in this.
this on the podcast, and then they had some kind of like, well, the body bags were for transporting something.
Rice.
I think that was actually someone who was talking to the podcast, talking to the New York Times, who had kind of got out because he was like, yeah, I'm into the idea of protecting my family, and I'm kind of scared of this whole wave of immigration.
Yeah.
But why do we need body bags? And they were like, well, you know, they're the best way to transport things from A to B. And he's like, I'm out. Lads, by the way.
And none of those people have been charged with anything. None of them are on trial. Like it's all just. It's none. They're all like they're all under surveillance and everything, and they've been questioned. Some of them were soldiers, some of them weren't soldiers.
So we have this thing called like Meinungsfreiheit in Germany. So that means if you hold public office, I've spoken about this before. If you're publicly kind of employed, you can't show any political or religious thing. So you can't wear a hijab as a teacher.
Yeah.
But you can be in the Bundeswehr and like have Nazi memorabilia and fucking weapons hoarded in your ground, and that's fine.
I mean, you'll probably get done for illegally owning a weapon, and you'll get a suspended sentence. I think that happened to one of them.
But do you still have any of them been kicked out of the Bundeswehr for like being?
Yeah, well, Franco R has.
Yeah, but not like they find a picture of. Oh no, I think that was somebody else. Like they keep finding these soldiers with, like pictures of Hitler, and they're like,
Yeah.
youthful passions. No.
Yeah,
Hitler.
well, they've had to change some of the rules about what you can and can't have in the barracks, apparently, and what you can. And this is all under. This is all. This is kind of what we're witnessing is the intelligence community of Germany kind of waking up to like slightly different structures and systems amongst the far right, which they're not really used to. What they
but they're just phenomenally bad at like.
So what is I'm doing a sieg, by the way, into the next bit of news.
Is that how it's properly pronounced? Because it's always called like Segway by Americans, which can't
I
be
thought
correct.
a Segway was one of those things that
It's
you
the
stand
same
on.
thing, yeah.
Well,
People talk about segueing into thing, but sorry, no,
I'm doing a
you were
sieg.
doing a great sieg or segue, and I have completely fucking disrailed it. I'm so sorry.
You've
Yes.
knocked me off my Segway
I have. Those are
into
very
the road,
dangerous.
into-
No one should get on one.
into the oncoming traffic. They
I
probably
would never do that. That's mean.
No, I know. I wasn't accusing you of.
I've just heard like grabbed you off to the pavement, made you look at something that you're
Right.
interested in.
Anyway, so the intelligence agencies of Germany. There is the Verfassungsschutz, which we've talked about, and there is the MAD or MAD, which is the Verfassungsschutz for the armed forces.
Ah,
It's called the Militärische Abschirmdienst, MAD, and they're the ones that are supposed to keep tabs on people like Franco R.
right.
And who
Well,
completely
they
did
need
not,
a wee bit of a performance review. I'm just going to put it out there. I
Yeah.
don't think maybe
because
the right people are in the MAD job.
right. So this is all was brought this kind of sweeping cultural change in the intelligence communities.
Yeah.
And every year, the Verfassungsschutz, the federal Verfassungsschutz, because there's one in each state as well, they bring out an annual report in which they set out all the different types of extremists that they know
it's
about
like an
in Germany.
extremist census or something.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
catalogue, and you can read through it, and they publish it, and they do a simple version, like a short version and a long version.
Too long, didn't really do. Okay. So this came out, and what's the story?
And they do a press conference which is attended by Horst Seehofer, because he is the interior minister, so that means he's the in charge of the Verfassungsschutz, and the head of the Verfassungsschutz is there, who is a man called Thomas Haldenwang.
I learned that today on the thing, and he's
the successor of
sorry.
Hans-Georg Maaßen. He's like now basically a hero for the new right.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets interesting, because a new section of the Verfassungsschutz report that came out said that we also have to keep tabs on these sort of this grey area between the extreme right terrorists groups and this new right, which is kind of this legal version of the new right. So these are perfectly legal organizations.
I feel like I've been shouting this quite a lot. Like, it's the same thing.
Right.
Not quite the same, but like a very, very slippery slope.
And you could probably count Franco R as a kind of new right type figure, because he's fairly young.
How do we spot a new writer?
He probably has like a weird little ponytail. No, I don't know. That's because what Franco R has. So
does he? I mean, I this is horrifying. But
right.
You just showed me a video of him being interviewed.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh my God, he looks really attractive," which is a terrible, terrible thing. But he does just look like a hipster. He doesn't. He's got like long hair and a big beard.
He's got like a smart beard, and he dresses quite well, and he's like
he's not.
This is these are kind of characteristics of the new right. They're kind of not what you think of as traditional neo-Nazis, and they're very clever in sort of subtly, especially these organizations that I'm going to talk about, which are now not under actual surveillance by the Verfassungsschutz, but under sort of a
general suspicion.
Like, we got to keep our eyes on these guys, but we're not like following them around or anything. And they kind of deliberately try and bridge the gap between what you'd call the political center, what is acceptable to say, and what is extreme right. So there are 4 groups that were named in the Verfassungsschutz report.
Okay, everybody listen up, because these are...
Okay. There's the identitarian movement.
No, absolutely. I don't even want to know. Identitarian? No. No.
There's Compact, which is a media outlet. It's like Breitbart. It's basically Germany's Breitbart. Compact magazine. You can find it online, and there's a YouTube channel.
Please don't.
There's the 1% movement.
No, I don't want to know what they think. 1% of anything. No. And there's absolutely not.
The Institut für Staatspolitik.
No.
The Institute for State Policy.
Because they're trying to sound like an official thing.
Yeah, that's like a think tank. They think of themselves as this basic intellectual
thing. What is a think tank?
It's a think tank's a sort of place where academics and researchers and clever people get together and come up with ideas for policies, which they then pass on to politicians.
We could do that.
We could start a think tank.
It would need us to be sober to write down things at the end of the podcast, but I think...
If anyone's making notes, they could do...
Who wants to form a think tank? Okay.
So they're kind of intellectuals.
So those are... Right. Grand. That's terrible.
Of those 4, probably the most important one was the last one that I mentioned, was the Institute for Staatspolitik, because that was started in the year 2000 by a man called Götz Kubitschek, who kind of became this sort of intellectual leading figure for all of the far right. So he kind of influenced the ideology of all the other groups that I mentioned.
He's one of these people that sort of put themselves forward as a sort of a rational intellectual.
Yeah.
Because those guys are really dangerous.
So the Institute for Staatspolitik, they're in a little town in eastern Germany called Schnellrode in Saxony-Anhalt, which is Kubitschek's hometown, and they have conferences every year, like all academics. They have like conferences every year, and the speakers at the conferences are very often AfD politicians, and often like the hardcore nationalist AfD politicians. And
as opposed to the lovely cuddly one.
Yeah, and they produce studies and papers, and it's all like
bullshit.
And they kind of really influence all these other groups, and the other groups are characterized by they're very like digitally aware. They're very professionalized. Yeah. They often say we're professionalizing the resistance. They call themselves the resistance, which is one of the reasons why that the Verfassungsschutz is onto them, because that kind of rhetoric of resistance, revolution, which they kind of all mention, is like that's like catnip to the Verfassungsschutz, because that means you're against the order, the political order. That means So The identitarian movement. That's European-wide.
Can I guess what they are, and can I guess what the 1% is? So I think the identitarian movement has something to do with, because, and again, I'm borrowing heavily from this wonderful podcast. So part of the new rhetoric is, rather than to say that, like the kind of like master race and shit like that, because they might not, like that might not fly anymore, but they're kind of like, well, it's just everyone should be, we can't have the mixing. Identity is important, and and it's like diversity is important. Is that?
Yeah, that is. Yeah, exactly. It's they
what
call
a shower of cunts. Fuck off. You can't have no.
They call it ethno-pluralism.
Yes, which sounds brilliant, except when you realise how they think that should be implemented, which is ridiculous.
Right. They think that all countries should have their own national identity, and they should all stick to that national identity. Like, there should be one national identity for each country, and everyone should just stay there, and no one should move around, and then everyone would be happy. Like everyone has their own identity, and everyone would be happy. So the African people, especially, they talk a lot about African people.
Yes, I don't think they're talking about me moving to Berlin.
No.
Are they? You fuckers.
And they think that's like, and basically they think that cultures don't mix, and when they say cultures, what they mean is ethnicities. And
yeah, they've sort of couched it in cultural terms rather than racial terms, so that you can be like, well, we're not.
Yeah, we're not racist.
Yeah, but you know what? Like, it's ridiculous to me and stuff, but there are swathes of people to whom that sounds very, and this is why they're so dangerous, because they.
Yeah.
A bit like that lad I was talking about who's interviewed, who's like, well, I know, I do fear other things for probably, for him, super valid reasons. And it's until you get so involved that you're like, oh, fuck, body bags? No. That's not ethno-pluralism. What? That's not sexy and philosophical and just keeps Germany for the... No.
Right. And the identitarian movement is very much pitched at the younger demographic. Like they do things like flash mobs. They do
flash mobs.
Yeah,
what? I know what a flash mob is, but what are they doing in the flash mob? Because flash mobs are for like people getting engaged or just a nice little playing a music video.
Well, they film it on YouTube, right? They film it and put it on YouTube, and then what they did was they climbed up the Brandenburg Gate. This is like a few years ago. That's like 2016, I think. They climbed up the Brandenburg Gate and hung a banner off it, and they weren't allowed to. And it was like they said it was like occupying. We occupied the Brandenburg Gate and said that Germany should be for the Germans.
So they didn't have a big ethno-pluralism banner. Like, it really, you just have to scratch a tiny, tiny bit of the surface, and it's like, oh.
Yeah. So they're really like far right, but they're very much pitched at like younger people. And they do weird things like media consultancy. They do financial consultancy. They bought a house in Halle. When I went to Halle, this was like really famous. The identitarians were really keen to like establish a base, like a place where like-minded people could come. And they bought a whole house in Halle and started going there. And all the left-wing people of Halle just paint bombed this house. And eventually drove them out. Eventually, they caused so much of a problem that the owners of the house, I probably got that wrong. They probably didn't buy the house. They probably just rented it because then they caused so much of a problem that the landlords just said this is too much to bother with, and they chucked out the identitarians. And
it's good to hear. That's the first positive thing we've heard about landlords for a while. So well done, those ones.
Yeah, so that was considered like a big win. Like when I went to Halle, that was like they really celebrated the fact that they managed to drive the identitarian base camp out of the town.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I remember like when I used to live in Friedrichshain like years and years and years ago, that Thor Steinar Nazi clothing company.
Yeah, it was
opened
like that.
up like on the. I can't remember, I think it was Petersburger Straße, but it was like literally kind of at the end of Regerstraße which is famous obviously, and particularly then had a lot more squats and stuff on it. That shop, I used to walk past every day at work, and it was just covered with more and more paint every day. I think they had to have security outside it, or a policeman had to be there the whole time, just being like, fuck's sake. And then I think it's obviously not there anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so
then there's the
the 1%. You want me to guess that?
Why are they called the 1% group?
something to do with they feel like they're the one, their culture is being reduced to 1% and they have to...
It is... No, but it's close. They call themselves a professional resistance platform for German interests, founded in 2015, and they call themselves the 1% because they've read somewhere that if they turn the opinion of 1% of a given population, so in this case the German population, to their ideas, that would be enough to influence general public opinion. Apparently this is some theory that if you get 1%,
sort of like the tipping point kind of.
Yeah.
Well,
and
I feel like more than 1% of the population are kind of into this, aren't they?
Well, about 12% of the population vote for the AfD, so presumably. Anyway,
12%'s not quite so ringy.
As the 1% group they claim to have 52,000 supporters, which is quite a long way off 1%. 1% of the German population would be 830,000 people. So they're not close to that. But what they do a lot of, again, digital marketing, and they support a lot of artists. So they have like a record label for right-wing bands. They even have a comic book publisher. They publish comic books.
Leave comic books and music alone. Like, go and do other boring crap with your...
And
leave the arts alone.
And they do podcasts and all this other stuff.
Oh, God.
Björn Höcke, by the way, he's been like... he's like a big go-to guy for all of these groups. They kind of interview him all the time. If you go on their websites, there's always an interview with Björn Höcke somewhere.
He upsets me, I think, maybe more than everyone, because he's an ex-teacher, and I'm just like, what have you done? What
have you done with your life?
Like, it's just so gross.
Yeah. So, and then I mentioned, we talked about the other two was Compact, which is freely available. It's like a totally right-wing racist magazine, and you can buy it at pretty much any kiosk as a magazine.
Oh, God, I'm going to be going around to all the ones that stock it now and then being like, no.
Throw it in the bin. And then the Institute for Staatspolitik, which does all the other stuff, which does the intellectual stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pseudo-intellectual.
And all of these people...
Lies dressed up as...
And these are the four groups that are now mentioned in the Verfassungsschutz report for the first time ever since last week. So that is quite a big...
It does seem like unbelievably late. Like, considering that all of these things in the Verfassungsschutz and the German constitution was set up in response to National Socialism and what had just happened. So it was like...
Yeah.
For them now to be sort of like... And I only really kind of know about like the sort of very recent history, but for them to shift from like maybe looking at like sort of really focusing on Islamic terrorism and now going like, oh, hang on, no, wait. And I'm being flippant, but like it's a good change, but it's also very late, and it's not going to bring back, all the victims of the NSU murders and all that shit. But right.
No. Anyway, should we end with some good news?
Yeah, let's end with a little positive thing. What made you proud about Deutschland this week? Because I was kind of proud. I was like...
Well, what made me proud was that little kid running onto the pitch. That skinny little kid ran onto the pitch just before the Hungary game.
And I learned a new word. He was a flitzer, which is a streaker. But instead of being naked, what was he doing, Conrad?
He was waving a rainbow flag.
He was.
In front of the Hungarian national team.
Yeah. Because UEFA made the strange decision to not allow Munich to light up the stadium with rainbow colours, because obviously like they wanted to send a bit of a signal, support the LGBTQ plus, I guess, thing of Europe, considering that Hungary has got some like really terrible things going on there.
Well, they just passed a Section 28 law.
I don't even know what that is.
That's the law that was outlawed in the UK in like the 80s. They got rid of it ages ago. It's that thing where you can't promote homosexual...
Yeah, so you can't have anything mentioned in schools or anything.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And they have it in Russia, and Hungary just passed it, Russia style.
Gross. It's so awful.
I might have got my facts wrong about Section 28, I think it was a thing in the 80s, and then they got rid of it recently or sometime. And so they just because of that had just happened. The mayor of Munich, who's SPD, he wanted to light up the stadium. You have to know that the Allianz Arena, which is where Bayern Munich play, is this great big sort of glowing donut.
Yeah.
And for every match day, you can light it up anywhere they like. It's like a huge. It's just one big.
So good to have the rainbow.
It's just one big light. The whole thing looks like a light bulb. The whole stadium from the outside.
Yeah, I think I've seen it from the.
Yeah.
From on the
and he wanted to, so the mayor, he basically shouldn't have done this, but he asked permission.
He should have asked for forgiveness rather than permission. I think it's one of those things.
He should have just done it, and then UEFA could have got annoyed with him afterwards. But what he did was he asked permission to UEFA whether he could light up the stadium like this way with the rainbow thing, and the UEFA, because they're just such pussies and don't know what to do, just said no.
But this is the thing, like, I don't understand why UEFA, like, I don't know who they are. I don't know where their money comes from. I don't know anything about them. But it's like this idea that is that going to be challenged in any legal way? Because they're wrong. They said this is not a political thing. But, like, I'm so angry at UEFA. I'm so angry at the EU. Like, how can an EU country be passing these laws? I don't understand it. Anyway, but
it's a sports federation. It's like they all they care about is their sponsorships. I mean, they're just
right.
They have like their own. If you go on the UEFA website, there's like an equality campaign and all this other stuff.
Yeah, fucking horseshit. Because it's not a political statement to say, "Hey, we support the human rights of gay people." Like, human rights are not politically controversial.
No.
Or at least they shouldn't be.
No. No, they're basic part of our constitution and our political order.
Get the Verfassungsschutz on UEFA.
Yeah.
Get them on them. And then fucking Hungary, like, I don't understand how, like, what is the point of the EU? I don't know. Don't answer that.
That's a longer podcast.
Yeah.
Than we've got time for.
Anyway, no, but what was good then, I think, and because everyone was so, like, pissed off with this UEFA thing, then it really became this big thing, and like the Olympiastadion here in Berlin, like all the other stadiums were kind of like lit up, which was really cool, all rainbows, and loads of people were wearing rainbow things. We had the amazing Flitzer onto the thing, just like,
and the captain of the German national team, Manuel Neuer, the goalkeeper, he also wore a rainbow armband for the game, which he had also already worn for previous games.
I just wear everything. I want football players to be covered, like, sort of.
And did you see when the German striker scored the goal?
No.
Did you see that?
No, because I did that thing where, and it was really brilliant, on ZDF, I was streaming it on my phone in the pub with my lovely friend Marika, because it was teacher's last day, so we go and try and stay awake long enough to drink a lot of Weinschorlers. We were watching the game. ZDF has this great thing where if you pause it to like go and get a falafel or whatever, then it brings you back to the point. Even if you go back to the live stream, it takes you back to the point that you were. But I didn't know that. So then when I refreshed my phone and I skipped forward, it suddenly went from like 1-0 to 2-1, and we'd missed all the goals.
Well, then you missed the best bit.
God damn it, tell me. This is going to be so exciting. Good news. We haven't had good news since our like first episode where you told me about the squirrel.
So what happened was that Germany were losing 2-1, and they would have gone out if they'd have lost the game, and Hungary would have gone through. So they needed to score one goal, and Leon Goretzka I
did see this, but I don't know what you're talking about.
In the about 80th minute or something.
Yeah.
He scored the goal that sent Hungary out, and then he went up to because behind the goal was all the Hungarian supporters, and a lot of them were pretty fascist. You could tell.
They looked like, I don't want to be judgy, but I was like, they were hard lads. Tops off.
Yeah, and they were not observing social distancing.
They were absolutely not. They were, it was like everyone else was like 2 seats apart, waving their little German and rainbow flags, and then it was like, this pit.
And Goretzka, when he scored the goal, he went up to that stand and he did like a heart thing. He did this heart symbol to those to those fans specifically, saying, you know,
love wins, presumably. I don't know what he was trying to say, but he was
draws.
like, love draws. But it's,
2-2. We will take that.
yeah, and it was seen as this big thing, and it was very,
I fucking missed that. I was,
so
by
it was
that
like
point, I was quite
a moment. It was a moment in the European Championships,
Yeah.
which is quite nice.
Yeah, I was...
And all the right-wing governments went out in the group stages.
Yeah, you were just saying that the Tats, like, which is the left-wing kind of newspaper here, did the 4 losers, the 4 bottom of all the group. Who were they? Turkey, Hungary, Poland, and
Russia.
So
they all went out in the group stages.
You see, love does win.
Anyway. On that note...
How's your delicious Megacan? Did you finish? I'm not finished yet.
On that timeless thought, I finished ages ago.
God, you just...
I caned it.
Tanning Megas. Yeah, well, this has been lovely to finish on a positive note. I hope everyone stays safe. You're probably not going to hear my dulcet tones for a few weeks, but you'll have maybe a
special guest.
Yeah.
For the next couple of episodes.
Yay. All right. Stay safe, everybody. Enjoy the weather and the beer gardens. Keep getting those Schnell tests. I don't know why I'm going to like public service announcement mode. Yeah. Go wave some rainbow flags at some people. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.